Hi there. Well, we are talking about how national elections work. We've talked about how that it is the Electoral College that actually determines the outcome of the presidential election. Here we have got a sample map that shows the weight given to each individual state. The bigger the population, the more weight that they get. Each state has This number is determined by the 2 senators that every state has, and then the number of congressional representatives. So it leaves Texas, California, and New York with the highest numbers, and states like Montana, Idaho, Wyoming with much smaller numbers. Okay, so this is the default map with no winners or losers indicated. But we also went through the 1992 election, the 1996 election, the 2000 election, the 2004 election, the 2008 election, the 2012 election, and from that we discovered that these are the states that voted exactly the same in each one of those 6 elections. We have got these states that voted Republican each time, these states that voted Democratic each time. Now, on the Democratic side, that totals up to 242 electoral votes of the states that for the last 6 elections have voted for the Democratic candidate, and 102 votes for the states that have voted for the conservative candidate, or the Republican candidate. Now, let's talk about this here. The site that I like the best for looking at, and I'm going to move me over to here because you'll be able to see better. The site that I like the best for looking at the current presidential race is 538, 538.com, and they just write it out, 538. Where does 538 come from? Whenever we add up the numbers for each one of these states, it will total up to 538. In order to get a simple majority, a presidential candidate has to get 270. So, the way that 538, the site 538, works is they look at the polls and they try to figure out, okay, which states are leaning which direction as of right now. So the way that they work it is based on probabilities. So for instance, what is the probability that Texas will vote Republican? Now remember, it's one of the states that has voted Republican in the last 6 elections. And if we click on this state, we will discover that its chances of voting Republican are quite high. In fact, it is 95.3% likely that Texas will go for Trump, as opposed to 4.7% going for Clinton. Okay, and then it goes into more detail like this. Okay, but let's go back. All right, now, I should also mention that the site 538 looks at the entire race and determines the chances of winning. So currently, as of the last set of polls, 538 is predicting that there is a 73.3% chance that Clinton will win the presidential election, and a 26.7% that Trump will win. So it's about 4-to-1 odds as of right now. Now, 538 is a very sophisticated website. They have 3 different ways of looking at this presidential election. So what these chances are based on is based on demographics, history, and current polling. This is probably the best indicator of the current standing of the presidential race. But we could take history and demographics out and just look at what the polls are saying as of right now. What the polls right now tell us about the election on November the 8th. This way of viewing the election looks much better for Clinton. Instead of being about a 75% chance, it's about an 80.9% chance that she will win. Now, there's a third way. Okay, so remember, this way of looking at the presidential race is saying, what are the chances of a win for one party or the other, one candidate or the other, on November the 8th? But another way of looking at it is okay, forget about November the 8th. Who would win today if the election were held today? And so that's what Nowcast tells us. So we click on the Nowcast button, and it's actually fairly similar to the polls only forecast, about 80.7% chance for Clinton. All right, well, let's look at the map and see what it tells us. Okay, so notice there are varying shades of red and blue. Actually, that's kind of a brownish red, it looks to me like. But there are various shades. The deeper the shade, the more likely that that particular state is going to go in either of the 2 directions. So let's look at New York. New York, about a 99.5% chance that if the election were held today, because remember, this is Nowcast, that about a 99.5% chance that the election would go to Clinton. So it is the deepest shade of blue. So New York, Illinois, California are all in that category. They're all in the neighborhood of 99%. Washington State, right up there, 98% chance. Vermont, the home of Bernie Sanders, 96% chance. If we go through the New England states, we've got Massachusetts, 97.6, Rhode Island, 94, Connecticut, 93, New Jersey, even though that's Chris Christie's state, it is a 96% chance it is going to go for Clinton. Delaware, Maryland, and probably the highest percentage chance is the District of Columbia. It is a very Democratic area. Let's look at Virginia. Virginia is not quite as Democratic as the other states. Now remember, Virginia is a southern state, and it historically had been a red state. It had gone to Republicans, but it has started going for Democrats, and now, if the vote were held today, there's a 91% chance, 91.8% chance that it would go for the Democrats. North Carolina, this is a state that was carried in 2008 by Obama. It will, according to the Nowcast, has about a 60% chance of going for the Democrats. Now this is in a lower tier. Notice the shade is lighter. And in fact, we should look, there are several shades. So we've got the darkest blue, And then we have got this shade of blue, only an 80% chance that Pennsylvania, only 80% chance that Pennsylvania will go for Clinton. Ohio, still lighter, 72.9% chance. Now, the lightest, well, so North Carolina, and if you look over on the other end of the map, Nevada, are in the 60% arena for going for Clinton. The lightest shade is the shade for Iowa. It's a 55 to 45% race there. So it's rather close. Okay, remember we're talking about the probabilities that a particular state will go to a particular candidate. Now, this is the nowcast. I don't usually even look at the nowcast because the election is not today. It shows us what would happen if the election were today, but the election is not today. So I generally stick to the polls only forecast and to the polls plus forecast, which has the most amount of data. Now, let's look at the polls only forecast. In the polls only forecast, we see that Georgia is a state that one would think would vote for Republicans. It is practically always voted for Republicans, but it is only a 56.9% chance that Trump will win it. South Carolina, a better than 60% chance that Trump will win it, but it is a lighter shade. We've got also Missouri, Arizona, Montana. These are states that normally you would anticipate that the Republican candidate is going to win, but yet they are the lightest. In fact, what has happened, because most of the people that do this sort of prognostication, try to predict the future, will generally put in swing states. And by swing states, they mean that there is a fairly reasonable chance that the Democrat or the Republican could win. And depending on who is putting that together, would determine who those swing states are. Traditionally, the swing states are Florida, North Carolina, because Obama did win North Carolina one time, Virginia, Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania has always, the last 6 elections, gone Democrat. Ohio, the same thing, but it's still considered a swing state. Iowa is considered a swing state. Colorado and Nevada. These states are all considered swing states, depending on who it is that is doing the predicting. Also, New Hampshire is usually on that list. But notice, of each one of those swing states that I have just mentioned, each one of them is a shade of blue. They are all leaning Democrat. And in fact, an odd thing is happening because now we have South Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Missouri, and Montana. Those are the ones that are leaners at this point. They are on the lower end of possibility that Donald Trump will carry them. So we have a very unusual situation happening this year. And it looks very difficult for Mr. Trump to be able to win the election. But it's a little bit more than 2 months away. We will see what happens in the meantime. So thank you very much for watching our video, and I hope you'll stay tuned for the next one.